Apart from urethane, the most hotly debated topic in recent years has been string pins. String pins have become more and more commonplace in centres, and many players are now finding their local centres switching to strings, which means they now have to play leagues and even tournaments on them. It's clearly not been a popular move, with many going as far as to refuse to bowl on strings. Part of the reason I made this video is to try and find out how many of you refuse to bowl on strings, and for those that do, what are your opinions? Can you see any benefits at all? Is there anything you like, or do you just flat out hate them? There's no doubt that strings will never be the same as freefall. Now, I've bowled on some that do get fairly close, but you're never going to get the same sort of pin action, and no matter how you set it up or which pin setters you use, they just don't fall the same. You rarely get messengers, and it does have a big impact on spares too. There's really only been a couple of centres I've bowled on that have got as close to freefall as possible, but even then it's clearly not the same. And there are other centres with the type of string pin setters that they use and how they're set up that are just so wildly different from freefall. On some string pin lanes, you do get a lot of interference from the strings, which interferes not only the first shot and the strikes, but it plays a big part in the spares as well. Now, when you look at the centres themselves, you can't exactly blame them for wanting to cut costs, and clearly strings are a far cheaper option and far easier to maintain. Freefall mechanics also seem to be a bit of a dying breed, and in some areas it can be extremely difficult to find a good mechanic capable of working on freefall. One side of the argument that you hear quite a lot for strings is that if we didn't have them, then many of the centres would have closed. And yes, while I personally would rather bowl on strings than not bowl at all, there are people who don't share that view. If there are no freefall centres nearby, then some will simply walk away from the game and not bowl at all. Personally, I love the game too much to do that. So yes, strings have allowed many bowling centres to remain open, and without them, who knows what sort of state bowling would be in, although I do fully understand and agree that from the point of view of the bowlers that have to play on them, it's nowhere near the same experience as freefall. Some even describe it as a completely different game. Many might have hoped that at least the PBA would have kept the tradition of the game alive and stick to freefall, but even the PBA has used strings. We had the first ever televised event on strings in 2025, and to be honest, it would not surprise me at all if very soon we see a PBA competition where you're competing for an actual title on strings on a telecast. I think many would switch off if they actually introduced them to an actual title event. Unfortunately, I think it's clear where all of this is going, and we're not going to go back. We are going to continue down this path of string pins, and we're going to see this more and more and more. I would like to think that the PBA on the whole will still use freefall for the majority of tournaments. We might see the occasional tournament with strings, but I'd like to think anyway that the PBA will continue on freefall. But as for, let's say, the typical league and tournament bowler, well, I think the way things are going, we might all have to eventually accept that the options for freefall are going to get less and less potentially, and therefore, if you want to play many leagues and tournaments, well, you might have to consider looking at strings. But I know there are many who flat out refuse and would rather give up the game. And as I said at the start of the video, I'm really interested to hear your opinions on this, whether you refuse to try strings, and also if you have tried them, what was your take? Let me know all of that in the comment section below. Don't forget to check out some of my recent videos, such as the video I made discussing who the greatest bowler of all time is. You can watch that by clicking the link above. And don't forget, if you have enjoyed what you've seen here today, I would really appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button below. Well, that's going to do it from me for today. And as always, thank you, bowling fans, and see you all next time.